Hey there, welcome to episode 71 of the down.Links Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording this episode at 6:03 a.m. on Wednesday, March 19, 2025. Why so early, you might say? Well, I got back from the gym, not just 10 minutes ago, but I got back from the gym, walking back, and it seemed appropriate to, since I'm up, record this week's episode of down.Links Sand right now. Still fresh. And so episode 71, the title being Walking. If you're not familiar with down.Links Sand audio program, down.Links Sand is a term. It is the scientifically correct term for what you might call pins and needles. It is the return of circulation to a limb usually. Maybe you sat on your hand, you fell asleep on your leg, fell asleep on your arm, a lot of sleeping. When the circulation returns, the sometimes unbearable feeling of down.Links Sand. Again, the technical term, which I coined when I was 3, 4, 5, something like that. It's an audio essay program, stories, tales, revelations, recollections. They may be useful to you or someone else. Probably not going to be any guests, but you never know. You never know. So today we're going to talk about walking, and we'll see where we go. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, a summary which I will read to you, and the episode links. The Shameless Self-Promotion 2 has grown to 3. We'll get there in a second. And then there are 2 relevant links for you to check out at your leisure. The summary of today's episode is, cars are very convenient and very problematic. And over the years, I have come to rely on not having one. A car, that is, choosing instead to go all in on public transit and, more than that, the up and downsides of being a pedestrian. I would say more up than down. Depends on if it's raining, I think. The links for today's episode, the usual, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. The other usual, Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. But right in the middle, since I've been talking about it for a long time, like 3 months, 2 months, 3 months. The Buy Me an Update link, hosted exclusively on buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. So I have a link right to it. You can go there. You can listen in on the Monday, usually early in the day. We'll try to get back on Monday mornings. A review of the previous week's audio programs for a quick rundown, and then whatever's coming up next, a place for announcements and so on. So there you go. Now I shouldn't have to really explain it. You can just go there and check it out if you want. Ko-fi.com does not host audio. You can link to it, except you can't link to Buy Me a Coffee. So I usually post some textual updates there. You don't have to spend any money at either of these platforms. I've had them for a long time. They're frequently used by people who are creating content, writing open source software, etc., as a way to engage their customers, their listeners, their users. Maybe they make some money, maybe they don't, who knows? But no pressure. I have a link to the 15minutecity.com. That's 15minute city. That's just an interesting idea. You can flip through that at your leisure. There are a few websites that focus on sort of postmodern city planning, post-automotive, post-car ownership, which I think kind of makes sense. The 15-minute city idea gets some controversy thrown at it. What is the motivation for this, etc.? But as a thing to ponder, I think it's fine. So not presenting it as an agenda, just a reference. You can check it out. What does it mean to be in a 15-minute city, especially if you don't own a car? Can you get around? Can you accomplish what you need to do? And I'll get into my take on that in this episode. I'll give you a hint. There's some walking involved. And City Nerd, if you haven't checked out City Nerd, he is very interesting. His name's Ray. He used to live in Las Vegas. So I connected with him when he was living here around the time we started pursuing our open transit initiative with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, of which I'm the managing director. So interesting character. He has moved from the Vegas area. He was a transit planner in somewhere in Oregon. I was going to say the Oregon area, but somewhere in Oregon, he was a transit planner. I cannot recall which city. I bet if you check out his content, he'll tell you. He'll give you a hint anyway. So check out, this one happens to be him being carless in Vegas. It's a YouTube video. Check it out. I will warn you, City Nerd is a little bit on the dry side in his presentation style, but the content is good. So let's get into it then. Pre-car. There was a time before I was driving a car. Before I had a car, I was walking all over the place. Rumor has it I was walking around the neighborhood, striking up conversations with the neighbors as soon as I was able to do both of these things, back in New Milford, New Jersey, where I spent some time. Strictly speaking, it's not exactly where I'm from, but it's where we were living for a little while before we moved to Arizona. Until I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was not really riding a bicycle. I was trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. Couldn't get the balance. To this day, I cannot even think about doing a skateboard or something similar like that. But the bicycle took me a little while. We had moved to Glendale, Arizona, near Phoenix. And one day I just said, I'm gonna try riding this bicycle, and everything worked. But I finally picked it up, and I was able to balance, and I did make use of a bike now and then to get around. I had a BMX style dirt bike for a while. It got stolen. I had an old Schwinn prior to that. I don't even know where that came from. So a bike is a great efficiency multiplier. If you're a Steve Jobs fan, you know he made a big deal about the Macintosh being the equivalent of a bicycle for human locomotion. So creativity with the Mac, getting around on the bike. Huge advantage over your predators, I guess. So I did make use of a bike. It's a great efficiency multiplier, and so I'm not arguing with that. But there is a certain amount of overhead, including a chain and a lock, because most of the time people want to steal your bike. That happened, as I said. Maybe some way to carry items, because you probably want to keep at least one hand on the handlebar. So if you're going to carry anything large or heavy, you have to balance the load. If you have one heavy bag of some sort, maybe you went to a store and you bought something and you got to carry it. If you're carrying it off center, it could throw off your steering and so on. So you got to account for these things. Hopefully you have a backpack or something, or some place to mount a center weighted piece of cargo on your bicycle frame somewhere, over the rear tire perhaps. And I personally do not care for bikes on pedestrian sidewalks. So dealing with traffic is a thing. You gotta, well, depending on how nice you are to the people on the sidewalks, you may be riding your bicycle in a bicycle lane or contending with traffic. And that can just be no fun. So sidewalks are for people walking. I try to remember that because it's usually me. Starting in junior high school, so I was age 13, I began using the Phoenix City bus system to get around a little bit. In fact, we were getting from Washington High School back to Royal Palm Junior High School. Myself and 2 other students were taking high school geometry when we were in 8th grade. Yep, true story. And then more bus in the high school time frame, so soon after, 14 through 18. And public transit has been an element of my personal transportation toolbox ever since. It probably didn't hurt that I was started off back in New Jersey with some exposure to buses and subways, getting around Manhattan and so on. And we did take that Greyhound bus across the country when I was age 6. So not driving in a vehicle, totally fine. Got indoctrinated fairly early. I went off to college. I had a car. I talked about this last week in the last week's episode, some automotive history as I've become carefree and car-free. I went through my car collection in the previous episode, so you can listen to that if you want. And recall, if you did listen to that already, that one, if you listened to that one, there you go. I did not have a car through college. So I went off to college, left my 1970 Volkswagen Bug in Glendale, Arizona. So for all 4 years, I was either getting a lift from a friend, especially if we were going to Tower Records or anywhere farther than a few miles, or I was walking. Living on campus made walking to and from classes and whatnot straightforward. I didn't have to drive to an apartment or go to the grocery stores and whatnot. And there were some places off the main campus that were relatively easy walks, be those the main library, for example, the college bookstore, the Pomona campus, which was on the other side of the 5 college campus complex. Harvey Mudd College was on the north side of the, we'll call it a rectangle of some sort. Pomona was on the south side, so it was the farthest away of the 5 colleges from Harvey Mudd. and an occasional walk to maybe an In-N-Out or an Easy Takeout Burger. Those two spots were almost literally across the street from the northeast corner of not only the Harvey Mudd College campus, but the Five College campus complex. There was a restaurant called The Hat. It was actually a longer walk, but it was definitely walkable. There were a few other restaurants. So they were on the way to Upland, California, a fine little city. By the time I was a senior and then graduated, I was walking maybe 3 miles, maybe more, to get to my favorite Thai place in Pomona and to the LA Fitness gym that I had an accidental 1-year membership for. So especially the summer after I graduated, I had time during the day to try to find a job so that I didn't have to live on campus forever. And then walk to Salam Luang in Pomona. Somebody who worked there would usually give me a ride back because they didn't want me to walk in Pomona at night. It's very nice people. And then I would walk to the LA Fitness gym, which was to the west of the campus, so I didn't have to venture down south into Pomona. So I walked to the gym, walked back. So I was doing about 3 miles, maybe 4. Then everything went crazy because I got a car when I reached Silicon Valley, and up until about 7 years ago, when I sold my Scion XB, which I've talked about previously, I had a vehicle of some kind with an engine in it throughout that time. So I was getting gasoline or diesel, dealing with parking, hoping the windows weren't smashed in, which did not go well that one time, if you listened to last week's episode, and generally taking the lazy route more than I should have, that is, driving when I could have walked. I would drive my car the mile or so to the gym. This was more when I was living in Sunnyvale. Sometimes to a workplace that was only a bit farther away than that. So walking to work was not a great option the majority of the time when I was living and working in the Silicon Valley area. I always lived in Sunnyvale, California, by the way. So wherever I was working, it was sometimes convenient to maybe walk. When I lived when I lived just south, like half a block south of Homestead, if you know the area, Homestead and Matilda, I could walk to the Apple campus, but the walk was longer than well, it wasn't really longer than the drive, but it took a long time just because of the pedestrian route was just not great. But yeah, a couple of times like that where the drive and the walk were either kind of silly to drive, but I still did. But for the most part, I was driving to work, just the way it worked out. Riding a bicycle in Silicon Valley, especially in the Sunnyvale where I was living, could be a bit dicey depending on which roads and at what time. I tried that. It was kind of scary sometimes, and this continued even in Vegas when I would sometimes drive the 0.6 miles from my apartment to the Smith's grocery store. Yipes, 6.6 miles, about 1 kilometer. When I was traveling for Intel, which was a lot, my car, and this was the Scion, so I was living in Vegas at the time, I had moved, ended up sitting in an apartment complex parking lot or a parking lot at the airport quite a bit, like all the time. When I was home, I would use my car when taking the bus here in Vegas would have been far easier from most perspectives. And I did do that sub-mile drive now and then, which was sort of silly. Driving to the gym was reasonable. That was about 3 miles, maybe 3.1 miles, maybe. But as I would find out, a 3-mile walk each way to the gym is actually quite doable. And the travel schedule made driving to the gym on the reduced number of occasions I did go to the gym each month that much worse an idea. Walking to the gym is part of exercising, and because I was taking the lazy route and driving my car to the gym, I only had 3 days a week maybe that I was in Vegas. Otherwise, I was in hotels and traveling in airplanes and staying awake for 48 hours at hackathons and whatnot. So I should have been walking to the gym, not driving, and I would do that later. I did eventually ditch my car when the Scion was sitting for 7 months without so much as turning over the engine to keep the battery charged, which means it was not charged when I was prepping to sell it. I decided to sell it. Why pay license, registration, insurance, and risk burglary or theft when it was just sitting there? And I got to be honest, I am to this day amazed that it was sitting for 7 months without having a window broken or a catalytic converter stolen or the car itself just stolen. It was the old square Scion XB body style, which was reasonably popular. You could wrap the car and use it for a roaming billboard and so on. So I'm kind of amazed that it didn't drive off on its own. I sold the car to Carfax because it was easy. I didn't have to deal with it all of those things were expired. So I was going to have to either get it registered and try to sell it, or just take it to Carfax. Took some back roads. No, I did get a temporary registration. So good enough to get it to the place to sell it to them. It was in reasonable shape, and I got a reasonable amount for it. And just like that, I was a full-time pedestrian. Though I did call for a Lyft, a rideshare car, to get back home once I sold the car. Kind of on my own at that point. They're like, well, see ya. Like, oh, that's right. I got to get home. I started off the new pedestrian life by walking around the neighborhood, measuring distance, and I have to say, I could walk a bit, but not really comfortably. I was finding myself, my God, that's a long way. I was walking when I was traveling, including a full walking wander of Rome, a lot of walking whenever I was in Dublin, and so on. But it was rarely walking to get somewhere, more about walking around. This time that was for real. I was going to be walking instead. I didn't have a car to drive, so I was going to be walking to get to and fro, walking with a purpose. I did start off my gym commute by riding my bicycle during the day, since I was trying out the idea of working with a trainer. So I had to go during the day when he was at work. They had some promotional pricing at the time, and I was a long-time member of the 24-hour fitness gym, so I figured, oh, okay, I'll just try it out. Still had my Intel money. This location was open 24 hours, just like it says, and biking to the gym during the day in traffic was a little bit dodgy, but nighttime seemed a little bit more sketchy than dodgy, if that makes sense. Walking would be the preferable way, as it turns out, because it turns out it was not sketchy. Although leaving my bicycle outside in the front of the gym when there's nobody around, like literally when I was at the gym midnight till about 2 a.m, it was a nobody. So if somebody saw me riding my bike to the gym, they could just follow me and take my bike. That sort of thing happens here. So when I was going to the gym so much, every other day, fairly consistently, I decided to try keto diet. I've described before my adventures in keto, and that once I get diet and exercise dialed in, a keto diet works well for me, as long as it's coupled with an exercise regimen. Those two elements are not trivial. A keto-friendly diet is essential for me, but a complementary exercise regimen is almost exactly as essential. I can't have one without the other, otherwise I'm just staying. And if I don't adhere to at least one of those, forget about it. For me, having only one of these dialed in sort of undoes the other, even for a short time. So beyond maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and certainly beyond the month, forget about it. So it basically resets everything. So the 3-mile walk each way to the 24-hour fitness was pretty solid. This was from my old apartment to that 24-hour fitness location. And as it turns out, it was a good warm up and cool down. Walking at night worked out far better than biking by day. I didn't have to worry about my bike leaving without me. And walking being less efficient than biking meant I could get a warm up and a cool down in the process, especially the production by street. Especially the walking to the gym. So I didn't rush. I just had a comfortable pace. I was timing it, and I would get to the gym plus or minus 30 seconds. So a 3.1 mile walk, start to finish within, 30 seconds. So I was pacing consistently and comfortably. So it was just a nice warm up. And then walking back home, also no real reason to rush. So it was good. My walking range at this point was pretty good for getting around. No longer would I would I give a 2 to 4 mile walk a second thought if I needed to get somewhere for some reason. If I had to go to a store that was, in fact, I will say there are stores that are on the other side of the freeway from where I live, where I lived and where I still live now, 2 different places. But if there was something that was 2 miles away, piece of cake. If I had to walk, well, actually, I'll tell you, every once in a while I'd have an Amazon package delivered to a locker, because package theft was a problem. I think I've talked about that previously. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to have a package delivered, I want to make sure I get it. So I would have anything of value delivered to a package locker that was near the gym. So it was probably a 2.5 mile walk. Piece of cake. 2.5 miles there, 2.5 miles back. Got my package, carry it the 2.5 miles back. No problem. So as I was walking more and more, these little foot journeys, not even a second thought. One time I learned that one of the bus routes that comes up to where I live, but it runs very late at night, back then, this is no longer true, but back then it didn't run all the way to where I lived late at night. So at something like 2 o'clock in the morning, it would only run about halfway home, and then it would stop. I learned this in real time. It would pull over, say, okay, this is the end of the line, and everybody on the bus would say, what? I'm sure somebody enjoyed that every morning, 2 in the morning. So I had to walk like 6 miles home, but it was fine. It was easy. So I wouldn't do that all the time. Not at 2 in the morning, not without some comfortable, I didn't really have the best walking shoes on for distance, but it all worked out. Once my OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, IF, intermittent fasting. So once my OMAD IF plans meshed with the alternating days walking to and from the gym and about an hour, hour and a half actually at the gym. Oh, and then once I was in ketosis pretty easily and getting good sleep after good exercise, not having a car became a fairly obvious component of general wellness. So all that walking was good, arguably great. I don't mean to get holistic on you, but once the notion of getting into a car to go to a store or run any errand less than a mile away becomes unthinkable, the aha moment has arrived. Like, why? To this day, I mean, it is kind of comical. Why was that? That's something out of Swingers, where they all get in their cars and pull forward like a half a block or something. So there was no good reason to get in my car, start it, and drive 0.6 miles, and then 0.6 miles back. Walking in the pandemic, though. So in March of 2020, I'm sure we will all remember where we were when that unfolded. We were home. Things start closing for an epic and educational pandemic lockdown. 24-hour fitness would suffer substantially, and my gym would never open again. Truth be told, 24-hour was not a well-run place. The entire chain, I had been to several of them throughout my years of having an active membership. They had too many locations, and they had an over-reliance on recurring membership subscriptions, and low attendance. So they basically counted on people signing up for, 1 year at a time, 2 year at a time. They eventually would switch to no commitment. So you just pay a monthly, or you could prepay for the year, but you could pay monthly. You didn't have to sign a long contract and whatnot. But they really counted on people signing up, paying, and then not showing up. So they'd sign up in January, and by March they were now paying guilt. They were paying rent on their laziness. For those of us looking for an exercise outlet, the open roads became the path to, home. You'd always end up back home. And I myself established a loop of about 3 miles to match my gym distance, although I would only walk that once. So I'd walk a 3-mile loop, but I would do it every day. So instead of going to and from the gym every other day, I was walking 3 miles a day. It doesn't really map directly like that. You can't get the same effect. But otherwise, I was just staying home like everybody else. So better than nothing. And I had a longer 5 to 6 mile loop to match the actual gym round trip. So sometimes I would walk much farther away from home, and then I would always end up back home. For my own health, I learned that walking alone is minimally sufficient. I'm walking by itself, not walking by myself. So walking alone is minimally sufficient, but not really great for me. There have been countless articles written about the 10,000 steps goal, how daily walking, even over short distance, is vastly more healthy, maybe even life-extending than sedentary days. And while I was still observing my OMAD, 1 meal a day, eating schedule most of the time, generally speaking, the pandemic lockdown was not great for my own health. Physical health, mental health, I was fine. I didn't go nuts or anything like that. But I was finding success with my gym schedule. I had balanced the diet. To this day, I still have my menu works out really well if I can stick to it. It was a long time ago when I did this. But some riced cauliflower, some spinach, some kale, some of that good stuff, and then 1 meal a day. And then if I can go get a really good workout every other day, wonderful. So others fared worse than I did, so I can't really complain too much. Everything really kind of worked out for me, but I didn't stick as closely to the workload, so the exercise or the energy consumption component. And then, it's hard to be home all the time and just stick with only your keto-friendly 1 meal a day. So every once in a while, there were some Cheeto days, maybe too many. I did manage to solidify my car-free days during this time, since we didn't need to go anywhere, we being everybody, And since I could take a bus if I really needed to go somewhere, and I did a few times, and everybody was wearing masks except for not. And those who did have masks on had their nose hanging out. So, people, because of people, that's how that works. There was simply no need to ponder having a car. At no time have I said to myself, I should go get a new car or another car, could be used. Worst case, I can rent a vehicle if I really need to. So I really don't have a strong desire to be a vehicle owner again. I didn't even use rideshare services during that year or so, as far as I can recall. I may have once, and I don't remember for what it might have been. Yeah, I don't remember. It was mostly walking, though. A lot of walking. So transit, walkable cities, and carlessness. I did have the link to the 15-minute city. That's just one example. You can look up walk-friendly, walkable cities or walking-friendly cities. Or there's a lot of content on the internet about that. It's an interesting concept. Some cities, and I want to say it's possible that Sunnyvale did this. I just saw a picture the other day. Murphy Avenue downtown, maybe somebody knows. They used to shut the street down one day a week in the summer and have like a music and just general, come and hang out on Murphy Avenue, and bars, restaurants, sitting on the sidewalk on the outdoor seating. So enjoying the music and the gathering and so on. It was a nice summer day. I can't remember if it was Wednesday, maybe. So I think I saw a picture where they just shut down Murphy completely, and they've changed the paving so it's no longer a street. It's more of a big sidewalk or something, probably more planters. I should check out some more pictures and see if that's true. Either way, you can find information about walkable cities. Vegas is arguably not such a walkable city, but it's not horrible. Jumping on the bus here in Vegas became a more regular occurrence after the pandemic. After the pandemic ended, you can insert your own winks there if you like. So I would take the bus to get around, and when we started the Innovate for Vegas Foundation with our Open Transit Initiative as our first kind of launch thing, like, hey, here's the first thing we're going to work on, because a lot of people agree that the transit system in Vegas could use some work. So if we can make our bus system better, and if the Regional Transportation Commission, I usually call it the Regional Transit Commission, but they actually do handle transportation, so roadways and construction, and I don't know if they really have enough orange cones, but I'm sure they always have them on order. So there's always something being ripped up or rebuilt in the way of transportation here in Vegas. Whether they will be completely supportive of an open transit initiative is pretty clear by now. The answer is no, but I figure if we can deploy it and get it up and running as a little demonstration or proof of concept, we'll see. But they really don't know what they're doing. I got to be honest. They outsource everything. So I digress. I reached out to the likes of City Nerd, who I've referred to, and people at the RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission here in Vegas, and a few other people involved with transit and city planning. It was becoming apparent to me that getting around without a car, something I was doing fairly regularly when I was visiting Europe for Intel, and when I was in China, when I was visiting Shenzhen, should not be so difficult as it can be here in Vegas or elsewhere. So if people, city planners and transit planners and so on, have not accounted for the fact that people will use public transit, and sometimes they have to, if they make the stops or the schedules not convenient, I'm talking to you, Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, if they're not paying attention and thinking to themselves, a lot of people who work in the service industry here in Vegas might be working until 1, 2, 3 in the morning. How cool would it be if we had buses that ran, even if they were every hour, to the different parts of the city instead of chopping off half of them, so that some run a lot and some don't. Like, I hope I live near an active bus line that runs past 2 o'clock in the morning. Wouldn't that be neat? So much potential here in Vegas. Once you become a full-time pedestrian, you really start noticing these things. And I'll, when I reach the end here, which we're about to, I'll have a few ad-libbed items. One thing that actually seems counterintuitive, though, depending on your goals, when things are too convenient, it becomes too easy not to get out and about. I moved from where I was living during the pandemic, and I lived in the same place for 7 years. I don't live that far from where I used to live, but this made the distance to my grocery store a matter of yards or meters, if you like. So I literally live across the street now. No longer is it 0.6 miles or 1 kilometer. It's crossing a street and walking to the front of the store. So we're talking 100 meters, 100 yards, somewhere in there. No, it's a little bit farther than that, but not much farther. So not really a lot of exercise doing that. The new gym I go to is only 1 mile away from where I live. So 24-hour closed. I moved closer to that new gym. The new gym opened about 3 years ago, and it's almost exactly 1 mile door to door, not 3. So it's 2 miles of walking, 1 there, 1 back. Most of what I need to accomplish can be accomplished by walking a shorter distance to the local bus transit center, which takes me 8 minutes if I have to wait for the traffic signal. So that's the maximum time, 8 minutes. It's also less than 0.6 miles. And on to the airport, to downtown, or connecting bus route with whatever walking might be necessary mixed in. Walking a mile or 2 at some point in a public transit outing is par for the course, and it's totally fine. And it's relatively easy at this point. But these trips become an important part of getting outside and moving around. Otherwise, everything is simple and simply and unexpectedly too convenient. And again, it's not completely counterintuitive when you think about it twice, but initially you would think, oh, good, everything's so convenient. Wait a minute, now I only have to walk for 30 seconds instead of 20 minutes, etc. Right? I will also say, and I mentioned that Vegas is not truly walkable. A lot of people are familiar with the Las Vegas Strip. The Las Vegas Strip has pedestrian bridges that cross over Las Vegas Boulevard, which is the Strip. They could probably use some more. There have been too many occasions where cars hit pedestrians. Sometimes they run up onto the sidewalk. That's Vegas. But the Strip is only a small, tiny, teeny tiny fraction of what Vegas is. Pedestrian collisions with vehicles or vice versa are not uncommon in the greater Vegas area. So you always have to be careful. When I'm crossing the street, taking my life into my own hands, I have been almost hit by cars not crossing the street. Crossing or walking on the sidewalk, but when you have to leave the sidewalk to cross a sort of a side street, a tributary street, and someone decides they want to turn left, turn right, but they don't look. But really, my favorite intersection in my loop, my 3-mile loop that I mentioned, I modified it based on my new residence location, but it's about 3 miles. And if I walk the uphill leg on would that be kind of the southwest side, the clockwise path. If I do counterclockwise is much safer. If I do the clockwise route, we'll call it that, I end up crossing a street that has a perfectly serviceable pedestrian signal. It lasts for 2 seconds. That's a bug. And nearly every time, like 80% plus, if there's a person that will be turning left facing me, so they're on the opposite side of the street, I'm walking. I don't want to get too much into like the geographical layout here, but I'm walking. I'm going to cross the street. They are heading in the opposite direction that I am. They're going to make the left turn, so they're going to be crossing the crosswalk that I'm going to be using. And 80 to 90% of the time, whoever's doing that will not look for me until they are about to hit me. Then they'll slam on their brakes or they'll swerve around me. So that's how Vegas works. And the 2-second light thing is a challenge. So typically I will try to lead off a little bit. So depending on what traffic is, whatever the time of day is, if I can, I will lead off because the nearest lane to me will be empty. So I'll try to get to the center of the street so that the person that will be turning left will be behind me. These are the things you have to look out for. But when you are a full-time pedestrian, you start to learn things like when a car tries to yield the right of way, but they are one car in one lane of a multi-lane street, they are not looking out for you. They just want to get on with their day. But as the full-time pedestrian that I am looking out for me. And I can see the car coming up behind you who is not stopping. So I'm not going to go. And then you're going to honk at me, and then the car will pass you and then pass me. And then maybe they'll say, oh, I guess you didn't want to get run over. Huh. That's how people are. He doesn't, he or she doesn't stop and say, hey, I'm sorry, I was getting all bent out of shape there. Who knew you didn't want to get hit by that other car? People in cars who are not regular pedestrians have no idea what to do with pedestrians. So I'm not going to say every day, but it's more than I would like where there are some close calls, which means you have to have your head on a swivel, as the saying goes. You have to keep an eye out for cars that are not going to slow down. They're going to take that yellow turning light. They're going to hit the gas. They can make it through. And you're in the crosswalk. I'm in the crosswalk. Like, hey, how's it going? You just got to be ready. Got to be ready for everything. As a wise man has said, when you're on a motorcycle, you have to drive as though everyone is trying to kill you. And when you're a pedestrian, even the people on motorcycles are trying to kill you. So you got to keep your eyes open. And I try to stay on the sidewalks as often as possible. What you do also learn is that people on bicycles are just as bad as everyone else. People who ride their bicycles on sidewalks don't care. Like, hey, person using the sidewalk legally as it was intended, you are in my way. So now, if I'm feeling particularly saucy, I jump into the bicycle lane and I'll say, I'm sorry, I should have been here. And then they usually give me some advice, some life advice, and they keep going, which is fine. The general gist of it, though, if you're going to be a pedestrian in the greater Vegas area, especially in the suburbs, you got to keep your eyes open. I think, though, this has made me a better driver if I happen to be driving a vehicle, which is very rare. The last time I drove a vehicle, it was a U-Haul, so 3 years ago or so. But I think it makes you pay attention a little bit more to what other people are trying to accomplish when they're walking or even on a bicycle. But yeah, the number one thing is when people try to yield to pedestrians. And I'll even look at people sometimes and say, like, I can see somebody pulling out of a parking lot, for example. They may not be able to see around a tree or maybe a building, depending on the layout. And all I got to do is step to the right a little bit, for example, if they're going to turn, if opposing traffic I'm facing opposing traffic. So they're going to try to turn their right. So they're going to go in front of me, making a right, get into traffic if there's any. Like, if I just move to my right a little bit, I can see all the way down. I know that a car is coming. So I might go. But on the other hand, if I know a car is coming, that car might themselves turn right. And I might be in the driveway trying to get you to cool your heels because I got to go and I'm going to honk at you until you start walking. But they might turn right and they probably won't see me. And then I'm in trouble. So instead, I just wait. And I will pull out my phone and I will start browsing the internets. And finally, the car will go and then the opposing car will pass. Hopefully they don't collide with each other, and then I can move around my day, get on with my day. And what I have realized in these various transactions is that I am not in that much of a rush. So I really have no time for that, for people who want to rush me or to put me in dangerous circumstances. So really, I have plenty of time to chill. I have plenty of time to sit on a corner. If people do honk, I usually say, I'm just standing here on the corner. You don't have to yell at me that, hey, why aren't you going? Because I'm not going. So I've developed a sort of a defensive walking strategy, and it really is centered on don't rush, don't take unnecessary risk. There will be another green light. There will be another pedestrian walk signal. And by the way, I mentioned that 2-second one. That is all the time, 2 seconds. And that's been quite a while. So nobody tries to fix it. That is another Vegas special. So there you go. I've learned a lot, though, in my walking career. I really, really, really don't feel the need to have a vehicle full time in Vegas. It's simply not worth it. Catalytic converter thefts have fallen off drastically. I don't know why. Tariffs? I don't know. But the number of cars that get broken into and the number of collisions and the number of hit and run accidents is about where it has been. So I prefer to be a attentive pedestrian. I don't have to pay extra for parking. I don't have to deal with a car that could get broken into anyway or get stolen outright. Those things still do happen. And they just get stolen with catalytic converters, I guess. And there are people that do donuts. They do the intersection takeovers here. They do drag racing, all the stuff, all the fun kid stuff. So I just try to avoid that. Stay off the roads, stay on the sidewalk. Hopefully they stay off the sidewalk and go from there. So that's being carless and careless. No, car free and carefree, the way to be. And I'm not a big fan of Lyft, but it's better than Uber. And I do try to make use of public transit. And if I ever do travel to other places again, which, maybe one of these days, I really try to avoid renting vehicles, and I really try to make the most of a tram or a subway or a bus system. And that was one of the fun parts about being in Dublin and various parts of Europe. They've really embraced public transit. And we should here also, more than we have. And that's true of any city, no matter where you are in the United States. There can always be a little bit more public transit to help people get around. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you for listening as always. Don't forget to check out that posts part of the Buy Me an Update, for the Buy Me an Update microcast exclusively on buymeacoffee.com. You don't spend any money. It's totally free. You can if you want to, and any proceeds do go towards coffee, which is how all of this happens. Coffee. Take care. Stay safe out there and watch out for pedestrians. One of them could be me.